Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're back on PTCGO, and you may have noticed already, maybe not, but I'm actually using a different microphone today. My new, nice, shiny Snowball mic has just arrived, and I'm testing out today, so hopefully I can figure out the distancing of how closely I need to sit next to this thing, if I need to move it at all. Sorry if your ears are bleeding right now. Hopefully I've figured it out by the time I'm actually uploading this to you guys. So anyway, today we're going to be playing with Exeggutor. It's a pretty interesting deck. I think it was Ross Cawthon who first brought this deck to life really in a competitive sense. And for those who don't know, it's all about using Exeggutor's blockade attack, doing only 10 damage, but stopping your opponent from using supporter cards. And every deck in the format right now is very heavily focused on supporters. Hardly any draw support in terms of Pokemon. Some people play Slurpuff, and Empoleon's being used, but of course Empoleon needs to be used via Archie. So really, other than top decking and the occasional Slurpuff, your opponent is very, very, very focused on using trainers and supporters for draw. And if you're stopping their flow of supporters, a lot of the time you can stop their flow of energy, of their Pokemon, and pretty much just stopping their setup as a whole. So what we're trying to do here is use blockade turn after turn and prevent our opponent from basically playing. The way we can do extra damage is using hypnotoxic lasers and Verbank City Gym, so don't be too worried about that 10 base damage. It actually racks up fairly quickly. So we're maxing out the 4 Exeggutor. We need to find this guy. Blockade's our whole strategy, so we need this. Then we have the 4 Execute. 30 HP is absolutely disgusting. One of the things that really puts me off playing this deck is that if we go second and start with a lone Execute, it only takes a Hypnotoxic Laser and a Verbank City Gym from our opponent to actually donk us. So that's pretty scary, and it might put you off altogether from playing this deck. Overall, it doesn't happen too often. It can happen on occasion though, and it's kind of annoying losing that way. But on the flip side, he has an amazing ability, Execute. He has propagation, so if he's in the discard pile, you can slap him back into the hand, and you can use this for Ultra Ball fodder. We play a maximum copy of 4 Ultra Ball in the deck, which I'll get to in a moment. But ultimately, we can use cards like Battle Compressor to search the deck for 3 Executes, and then put them all into our hand. So effectively, it's like a Pokemon collector, but in a trainer card. So it's absolutely fantastic to search out these Executes, and it makes it really consistent, this sort of deck. So getting these eggs out is fantastic. Also, when 1 or 2 of our Exeggutors die, we can automatically have another attacker next turn by picking up our Execute from the discard pile, put it back down on the bench. So that's pretty cool. Execute, a pretty nifty ability. We see it at the moment in Flareon based decks, some others as well, like Night March like to use it sometimes to sort out their maths in the hand for Archie's trump card. We're using it in here because we actually need to attack with it, which hasn't been seen too often other than this strategy. So following on from this, we are using 1 Genesect EX. The reason why we play Genesect is for Red Signal, and Red Signal alone pretty much. There has been one occasion when I've got a Megalo Cannon off just to finish off a game against a Seismitoad, but most of the time it is Red Signal. The reason why we use Genesect and Red Signal rather than using Lysanders, which most decks go down, it's because we're using a heavy random receiver count, and really what we want to be doing with random receiver is finding a Juniper every time, so that we can keep motoring through our deck, finding Hypnotoxic Lasers and Crushing Hammers, because that's really what this deck is built around, using these sort of trolly cards that no one likes to play against, and spamming them as often as we can. So if we use Genesect, it means that we don't need to play Lysander in the deck, so we have a better chance of getting Junipers via random receiver. It's kind of complicated, but also the fact that Exeggutor only has a 1 energy attack means that we're not always searching for energy to place onto attackers each turn. We can waste an energy, or a plasma energy in this case, attaching it just to Genesect for the catcher effect. So Genesect's very, very useful in here for helping us, and makes the deck function with a strange sort of supporter build, as you can probably already tell. Next we have a Virizion EX. The reason why we play Virizion is for Verdant Wind. Basically we don't want our Exeggutor to take unnecessary damage via laser, especially because Exeggutor has a -20 resistance to water. Seismitoad really does struggle hurting Exeggutor, especially if we have Verdant Wind and a Grass Energy on the active, so that we're not going to have any excess damage, and it's going to take them like 4 hits to kill us, pretty much, 4 or 5 most of the time if they have muscle bands. Also, the fact that having Verdant Wind means that we can't be paralyzed or sleeping means that we can pretty much guarantee a blockade turn after turn if we have the Exeggutor going. So Virizion, very important here to prevent us falling asleep, which would then get your opponent out of the lock. So that sort of thing is why Virizion's in here. We have 1 Jirachi, just for consistency purposes. I see no reason not to. We have 4 Ultra Ball in here, and it's a pretty good option to have. Seeing as though we only have 5 supporters in the deck, Jirachi can be clutch sometimes. We're also using a single Mr. Mime, a lot of one-offs in this deck. I've actually considered having a town map in here. I'll get to that in a moment though, because all of these one-offs are pretty important for the specific matchup. For now, we're having 1 Mr. Mime because Landorus can absolutely wreck all the eggs on our bench, if not, and it's basically a prize every turn for a Landorus deck without Mr. Mime, so we need that sort of thing. Also, just Genesects, Darkrais even, random stuff can just take sneaky prizes on executes if we don't keep it in check, which is why we have Mr. Mime in here. Then we've got another 1/1 line in here. We have a single Skrelp and a single Dragalge, or Dragalge, I don't know how to say it really. But basically, this is in here for Keldeo EX. A massive, massive problem, as I've already mentioned, is that we use Hypnotoxic Laser to rack up our damage. And if opponents use Keldeo Floatstone combinations, which isn't too popular right now because of the amount of Garbodor being seen, but still, Keldeo Float can be snuck into a few decks. Some Seismitoad players, Seismipuff players, and stuff like that like to have a Keldeo in there for the mirror match and stuff like that. So Dragalge means that if we use a red signal and actually Hypnotoxic Laser a Keldeo, that Keldeo is now stuck. And then we can slowly blockade away this Keldeo to kill it, and then Keldeo is no longer a problem for us. So Dragalge, very important in here. Kind of niche in its usage. You don't need it out every game, but it's nice if you do, even if they don't play Keldeo, because it's extra sort of forcing your opponent active, and then we're going to deny their energy and stuff like that. So Dragalge, an extra sort of addition to the lock, and of course a check to Keldeo. So on to trainers now. We're using a comp search. We're trying to be as quick as possible and consistent as possible, and computer search helps us out there. I feel like it's better than all the other race specs. There's no point in us having Dowsing Mech because we're going to be reliant on Trump Card instead. And basically we can use Propagation to pay the cost of computer search if we manage our executes in the discard pile correctly. So comp search is pretty useful here. For Battle Compressor, like I mentioned, it means we can get 3 eggs in the discard, and we can, if we wish, put them all back into our hand and then play them as we like. It's also very useful for getting rid of things you don't need. Maybe if we're not against Landorus, we can throw away that Mime. We can throw away Virizion if we're not against lasers. All of these sorts of things we can just throw into the discard pile. 4 is sort of overkill, but it's just so useful for getting execute. It's like playing 4 collectors back in the day, so I feel like it is worth having 4 in here. Of course, once you've used your compressors, you can use, say, your 3rd one to discard the 4th one from your deck, so it's not clogging up. So it works out having 4 in here. Next up, hammers. This is a massive, massive part of the deck. Because they're going to be supporter locked, oftentimes they're only going to have 1 or 2 energy in hand, and they're going to be waiting to top deck extra energy every time they want to attack. If we put even more pressure on them by using Crushing Hammers and discarding whatever energy they do have on the field, it's going to make it very difficult for them to get attacks off. And it's great spamming these Crushing Hammers over and over again, because it can really troll and stop your opponent in their tracks, really. The same reason why we have 2 Enhanced Hammers in here. The reason why I only play 2 is because not every deck uses specials, and it's kind of clunky having that many more hammers in here. If I had space, I'd probably put a 3rd in, but I just don't see it right now. 4 lasers. This is essential for the output of the whole deck. So the one good thing is, if we are under Toad Lock, we have the resistance and the weakness on the Toad that we can still do good damage. So if you're worried about saying, oh, look at this deck, it's all about the trainers, Exeggutor can actually fight Toad without the support of a lot of the trainers, which is pretty useful. Then we have 4 random receivers. Like I say, random receiver and Juniper is the whole engine of the deck, basically. We're using this to motor through the deck as much as we can, finding lasers and hammers whenever we need them, and extra attackers and all that stuff as well. And just sort of motoring through the whole deck, and then using a trump card to recycle everything. Also, it throws whatever your opponent's discarded back into their deck as well. Could be annoying if you're putting a bunch of energy and not much else back in, because they're more likely to draw back into energy. But like I say, we're probably going to have the easier time to find these hammers and stuff again, rather than they are going to be able to find energies, multiples of anyway. So it's very useful using trump card. Also, if they've been discarding supporters with trainer cards, just to get them out of the hand and out of the deck, you can filter all of those back into the deck to give them worse top decks. So that's trump card, basically. I've sort of explained that via the random receiver and Juniper. It's kind of difficult to talk about just one card in this deck, because it's a real interesting engine. You can compressor away the trump card early, so that all of your random receivers automatically get you Junipers, and then you rely on one of these 4 VS Seekers at some point in the game to trump card your stuff back in. Do be wary though, a lot of people can forget this. You need to try and get your executes back in hand before you trump card, unless for a specific reason you don't want to do that. For example, if you're under Garbodor lock, you can't use propagation, so you're actually going to have to allow your eggs back into the deck to search them again. But most of the time you do want to propagate both eggs, or however many eggs are in your discard pile. It is normally 2, because you like to have a second one. So you'd have your Exeggutor active and then 1 execute or Exeggutor on the bench for whenever you get knocked out. You normally keep 2 in the discard, unless you're up against Garbodor knowingly. You want to have them on the field and stuff like that. So you have to be aware of how many eggs are in your discard pile before you trump card. It's a common mistake I see a lot of people make when they're just testing out Exeggutor, myself included, I'll be honest, but I've got over that now. So next we have 4 Ultra Ball. It's a fantastic card, gets us whatever we need. It's an extra out to a Juniper basically as well. And because we can use Exeggutors to pay the cost of Ultra Ball, they basically just become free Pokemon searches, which is fantastic. Then we have 3 Verbank. Obviously I've highlighted the importance of lasers. Verbank makes it that much more. Then we have 3 Muscle Bands, so Blockade is doing 30, 60 with Verbank and Laser each turn. Going back into your turn, they've got 90 damage on them. It makes great numbers for these lasers. So that's pretty good. It means that it's 180 going back into our turn, which normally kills out EXs as well, so they have to bring something else up that we can then laser as well. The math just works out really nicely with having Muscle Bands in here. So then Energy, we're playing the 4 Plasma for Red Signal. Also, Blockade is colourless, so it works out pretty nicely. And 4 Grass Energy. You may notice that we don't have any switching cards of any sort in this deck. It is one potential flaw, but I'll tell you why it's not too much of a problem in a moment. We do have 1 retreat cost on every one of our Pokemon in the deck, even Dragalge. The only thing that has a 2 retreat cost is Exeggutor, but you're not normally going to be retreating out of him unless it's some sort of strange situation. But most of the time, we're going to be using single energies to retreat if anything other than Execute is active, which normally doesn't hurt us too much because we're not going to be attacking turn 1 anyway, and turn 2, if we can find another energy, we can start blockading no matter what. So it's pretty useful. And the fact that your opponent can't use Lysander if we're using Blockade, it means it's not going to be too frequent that anything other than Exeggutor is going to be in the active position. So although you may think, wow, this really needs a Floatstone or some other switching cards, hold back on that thought for a little while, because your opponent's not going to be Lysandering you, and it's only really going to be the first turn, if ever, that you don't have oh god, it's a tongue twister, Exeggutor or Execute in the active slot. So yeah, bear that in mind. So that's the deck. It's pretty creative, and the build is very odd. Only 5 supporters, using a random receiver to search these out, and Ultra Balls for Jirachi. It actually makes it very consistent to grab Junipers, and the only real way to demonstrate that, as we all know, is in a battle. So hopefully we don't get people just scooping to us, because that is the automatic response when someone sees an Exeggutor deck. Those 10 wins, I've had, I think, 15 games. I've been donked twice, and I think I've had 7 people concede to me. So I've only had 3 games where it's actually gone the whole way without someone getting frustrated. So if you're bringing this to a tournament, I imagine that you're going to face some pretty grim faces, and you're not going to be the most popular person there, I'll be honest. But here we go, we've mulliganed a couple of times, but we have found ourselves an Execute, and we're up against Magic Carpet, pretty cool name. And hopefully our opponent doesn't have a Verbank laser here. Unless we're going first, I didn't really pay attention. Oh, we are going first, that's cool. So, we're going to start off attaching a Muscle Band to the active, and it looks like we're up against a Fairy build. Pretty old school build if they're using Xerneas EXs. But hey, let's not judge. We're going to go for an Ultra Ball, getting rid of an Execute and a Crushing Hammer, seeing as though they have no energy in play yet. I'm just going to grab another egg so that we can Juniper it away. To put 2 in the discard pile to help us out. And now we can bench a Genesect DX. No point in putting Verbank down just yet, because it's likely, if it's a Fairy build, that they're going to have high counts of Fairy Garden. So instead, we're just going to propagate one back into the hand and bench it. So if for some reason he's able to hit 30 damage, not many Fairies do damage in the opening turns, but if there's some way that Execute can die, we've got another one in the back just for next turn. So we'll hand it over now, and hopefully we can see some more of our opponent's deck. We do see a Fairy Energy. And there's a Fairy Garden, so we're going to be able to bounce that as soon as possible. We get End as well. That could be useful if we can find Exeggutor, which we are able to do. That's pretty nice. We're going to see a Spritzy come down as well. And no non-EX Xerneas. That's actually pretty good. If we can hold off our opponent getting non-EX Xerneas, we could probably deny their energy a bit more effectively. We do flip tails on a Crushing Hammer. I'm going to slap a Skrelp down straight away, because Fairy Gun makes it easy for them to retreat out of poison. There's no point in us putting Virizion down, because it's not going to be a laser focused deck by the looks of things. So we can just Juniper it away and hope to find some more trolly cards. We can use a Battle Compressor here and just scout out the deck. Our Dragalge is in here, that's pretty useful to know. Our trump card, and how many VS Seekers do we have? It looks like there's 3 VS Seekers in the deck. Very important to keep track of your VS Seeker count, because of course you don't want to go down to a super thin deck and then not actually have the VS Seeker to trump card yourself back. But it looks like we should be safe. There's 3 still in the discard pile, and we've already got all of our eggs either in hand or in the discard or on the field, so we can happily just get rid of a couple of Battle Compressors now. They're not going to be all that useful from this point. They become useful once again after you trump card. So for now we can just compress 2 others away as well as the trump card. We can use Propagation and Ultra Ball away 2 Executes to help us find another Exeggutor, I think. We have a Jirachi as well for next turn. As you can see, the deck may not look consistent on paper, but it does actually work out quite easily. There's a laser from us, we get Tails, so we are probably going to get hit in the face next turn, but we can start the blockade lock, and that's what this is all about here. Hopefully our opponent does not play the Fairy Slurpuff. That could really, really harm our chances of winning this game. We're going to see an attachment to the bench, so he's not got a DCE, which is good, and he's going to take another 30 from Poison. Here we can throw away a laser, trying to get a Sleep Flip because we're going to be Junipering. As I say, you can pretty much throw caution to the wind with this deck and just hope to draw into more stuff, because basically now we're looking for Dragalge and we're also looking for Crushing Hammers if we can find any. We are able to find Dragalge. I'm going to hold the Muscle Band in hand simply because it's likely that Fairy decks play Megaphones, and I don't want both to go because then our output is going to be shocking. So we'll just go for Blockade here, do another 30, and it's Tails, so he does stay asleep. That's pretty good for us. We also have to be aware of Keldeo. Some Fairy decks like to play Keldeo. We do see a Rainbow, so it's more of a Fairy box build. And we're going to see a Max Potion on the active. That's pretty okay there. he stays asleep, so there's no point in going for much else here. We could actually go for a catcher and try and catch this one and blockade it. I feel like that's a good play, because if we force... Oh, I misclicked. I misclicked the laser. That's pretty poor. Okay, maybe we won't then. We'll hold off this turn and see what we draw. That's pretty bad. We should have captured... should have red signaled this one up and then lasered it, but I misclicked the laser. Good. Good. So we're gonna get he's gonna get a third energy attached. This one's staying asleep, which is pretty nice for us. Still staying asleep. That's pretty low odds. Probably like 12%ish. So here we get an Ultra Ball, and I almost always insta-play Ultra Ball because of these executes in our discard pile. There's not much that we need. I don't think there's anything actually in deck that we can search. But I'm just gonna have another scout here. Got to keep track of our VS Seekers. Like I say, the whole time it's very important to know. There are a couple of Crushing Hammers in here. And it would be pretty good to start finding these. So we're going to go for the Random Receiver. It's right at the top of the deck. We can... I still think there's no point in red signaling because our lasers are now all in the discard, I believe. Because of that awesome misclick. Gotta love playing online. I think because I'm talking as well, it's sort of distracting sometimes. But here comes the Crushing Hammer. We get our first heads. We're going to get rid of... Difficult decision here to get the Rainbow or the actual Fairy to go. Because we do play Enhanced Hammer, it might be easier to find it later to get rid of one of the Rainbows. But because he's got two, I feel like we should still take one of the Rainbows away. And here we can go for Blockade once again. And we're actually going to get a knockout here, the first two prizes of the game. And we're going to pick up a Random Receiver and our fourth laser. One of them was prized, and that's a really good pull off the prizes there. So far our opponent's not been able to touch us, but it looks like we're going to get hit with Breakthrough for 60 and 30 to one of the bench. But a pretty rare sight seeing Exeggutor actually survive a hit. That is a pretty rare occurrence. We're going to use Laser here, and we do get a heads, which is nice. And we're going to use VS Seeker for trump card now, seeing as though all of our lasers are in the discard pile. And because using a Juniper would make us lose the game. So we'll trump here. And I actually didn't put the executes back in. It's exactly what I warned people about in the deck analysis. Good. Well, there's not much pressure on us actually, because we have another one set up. So I'm not actually too worried about that. Although it was a misplay. We're going to do Blockade, and unfortunately our opponent again is staying asleep here. Pretty bad for him. I don't know what else. And there's the first scoop. I feel like it's going to be almost impossible to get full games with Exeggutor. People just scoop. It's just the way it is. Don't know if people would do it as much in real life. But online it's just way too easy to say, great, I fell asleep, scoop. Let's find a new opponent. But we have found ourselves a new opponent, and it's Livimon here, and we're going to mulligan and find an execute. And we will play this down. Again, cross our fingers for no Verbank laser. And it looks like... Oh, we're actually going first, which is good. And it looks like we're up against Yveltal Toads, or Yveltal attackers, I guess. Seeing a Mewtwo and a Seismitoad makes me think he probably doesn't have Garbodor, or maybe a thin Garb line. So here we're going to find a couple of executes. That's definitely important here. And we need our Virizion. That's good to see. Our trump card was already in there. It might be that I go for all three eggs here. I could also get rid of a Verbank, knowing that most Yveltal players use a high Verbank count, but I feel like the 3 eggs is still probably the best option here. So we're going to use a Pokemon collector here via Battle Compressor, and then we're going to double propagation to pay the cost of the comp search. And what we're going to find is probably the Virizion. I feel like Virizion is one of the most important things we can have in this matchup. I could also go for a laser. That would probably be kind of trolly. But I feel like Virizion overall is going to be an important card here. So we'll find that early. And then just go for a Juniper. Again, with 4 Exeggutor, you don't have to be too worried about Junipering 1 or 2 away over the course. So here we actually find Verbank and Laser. That's fantastic for us. We do get a Tails, but here we can go for another Compressor. And we're going to get rid of a few things. We're going to get rid of Trump Card. Even though he's boasting a Seismitoad in the active right now, most of the time they're not going to be using Toad the whole game. So I feel comfortable relying on our VS Seekers and just discarding the Trump Card early on. And we're going to get rid of another Compressor, I think. We're going to get rid of a Verbank too because we've already got ours into play. So here we can propagate, I think, just 1. Yeah, we just need just 1 for now. And I'm actually going to put a Muscle Band on the bench. Could put it on the active, but actually, you know what? We're going to propagate 2 because I want to get the use out of our trainers early on. And we'll put it here on the bench as well because it's likely we are going to get knocked out either by the Toad or by this Yveltal. So now we can hand it over and see what our opponent wants to do here. We've actually not lucked out too well and we don't have a support over next turn. We'll see what can happen. If we are hit with a Quaking Punch, it might be more difficult. So kind of awkward spot here. We see a Juniper from the opponent, getting rid of a switch, getting rid of 2 switches. So it looks like he's content to Quaking Punch us here. Otherwise he probably would have switched into this guy. We're going to see the DCE come down. He also throws away a Garb, which I'm happy to see hit the discard pile. And he's just going to Quaking Punch for 10. We do have that resistance. Many people forget about it. And we actually top deck a Juniper, so we're in luck here, guys. We can evolve, attach, and go for the Juniper. As if it was a plan the whole time. And we haven't found anything too useful, seeing as though we're trainer locked now. But we can just blockade. We're doing 20 because we attach the muscle bands both to the bench, but also the 30 from Hypnotoxic is going to start racking up on this Toad pretty quickly. We're going to see a laser from the opponent. Seeing as though we found a Plasma Energy, we are going to get sent to sleep. And a Trubbish hits the bench. That's worrying. And is our opponent going to keep on going for the Quaking Punch? It's an interesting argument because it's likely that he'll die and throw away 2 prizes if he does. But he might think it's worth Quaking Punching, or she, I should say. Excuse me, she might think it's worth it just to get the damage on us and stop us from using trainers. Our opponent's going to go for a Dowsing now. And what could she be going for? Switch? Yeah, she's going for a switch. She's actually going to Bicycle first. She's already attached to the Mewtwo, so I don't know why she's picked up that switch. Maybe just to use the bike. Interesting play, really. She threw away a Juniper. Now she is going to switch into the Mewtwo. And just pass, giving us trainers. I think that's probably the weakest thing she could have done. We're going to see a... Well, we've got a Crushing Hammer. I'm going to get rid of it on the active. We can actually Muscle Band our active Pokemon now. We can propagate 1 back in. Actually, sometimes it is overkill to just use propagation, but because we're going to Juniper anyway. But we're going to find ourselves an Exeggutor. And although we do have an energy, I want to find a grass this turn to cure us from poison via Virizion. So we're just going to use Juniper here. And we do find some grass, which is nice. We can attach and cure ourselves of poison and go for a laser to start beating away at this Mewtwo. Our opponent's only got 3 cards in hand. Actually, seeing as though they got rid of the Juniper, probably a smart play with the blockade. It just looks confusing when you consider normal decks. Our opponent's just going to simply attach a DCE and knock us out. Pretty simple turn there. We can go into our Exeggutor and attach a Grass Energy. Oops, I do want to do that, definitely. I want to click Use Abilities. There you go. We're going to Propagate 2, Ultra Ball, and now I'm going to Scout Omni VSC because we have. It could be a turn where I want to, I know I want a Genesect. Actually, I probably want Exeggutor. We do still have a VS Seeker in the deck, so we could go for Juniper here. What would I really be wanting though? Just some more hammers. We do have a lot of hammers still in the deck, so we can evolve here. And our trump card's definitely in the disc, yeah. We can VS Seeker Juniper and hope to find some of these hammers for the DCEs here. We do find Enhanced, that's going straight on the active. We can drop Genesect DX down as well, and then we can go for a Crushing Hammer. We do get Tails. We can go for another one, because the last thing I want is to get Quaking Punch right before we can VS Seeker to trump card. That's something to be wary of. But here we can just go for another Blockade. Hopefully we don't get damage this turn, then the Mewtwo will die coming into ours, and our opponent's going to be in a pretty awkward spot here. Exeggutor, very good at trolling and stopping decks from doing what they want to do. We're going to see a Garbodor come down and a Yveltal as well. I've not actually gone for the double propagation just yet, but it looks like he's just got to pass his turn away, which is really nice for us. Now that we do see Garbodor, I'm actually going to pick back up a couple of these eggs, and there's no point in us using Ultra Ball. We can just bench them. I'm at least going to bench one, because if Garbodor gets a tool on it, we're not going to be able to respam our executes. Here we actually get heads on the laser, which is pretty useful, and we can blockade once again for 30, and he stays asleep, or she. God, I need to keep saying she. They stay asleep, which is very bad, because Yveltal will be able to help attach to other stuff on the bench and render our Crushing and Enhanced Hammers a bit less useful. But because they stayed asleep, that's really going to help us out here. We actually see an Ultra Ball getting rid of a Float Stone, not valuing the Garbodor right now. One big thing about having Garbodor, it means that Virizion gets shut down, so surprising to see the Float Stone hit the discard pile. She's going to go for a Yveltal EX and just attaches to it. And they stay asleep. Actually, no, they wake up, but they'll die anyway coming into next turn. Unless we choose to pick off something else at this point. I could just go for the red signal to kill Seismitoad. Because no, I think I still want to kill the active, because that's the thing that can actually do damage to us for now. So I'm happy just to blockade here, take the single prize. It's a bit annoying having to take a single prize, but I still think it's valuable here. The only thing that can definitely attack is Seismitoad. Not too worried about that. So the Yveltal EX comes out, and let's see how lucky our opponent is. And they can just pass, that's great for us. we can VS Seek our trump card. We did still have one in the deck, but here we can just trump card, get back all of our lasers and our hammers that we've used so far. And Exeggutor, maybe not the most entertaining deck to commentate because it's fairly slow and it's an annoying strategy, but so far it's proven quite effective. Even under Toad Lock, it's worked out pretty nicely. We can get a laser off here. We can also go for a compressor so that we can get rid of other stuff that we don't need right now, such as the Verbank City Gym, Mr. Mime, just those things. A lot of stuff is still useful in the deck, so we'll just get rid of another compressor for now. We can also Ultra Ball away an egg and a Verbank to find another Exeggutor. Looks like Skrelp is prized again because it's a Garbodor build, though. Not too worried. It's not likely that they play Keldeo, which, as I say, is the main reason why we play Dragalge in here. So I'm actually just going to Ultra Ball it away so that we can find Jirachi if we need to use a supporter next turn. And we can just blockade here for another 30. The poison racks up as well. And we'll see if they can top deck into some energy. And we get another scoop of the day. Brilliant. I think we can have one more game. We'll have one more game, guys. Maybe it'll go to the finish. But as I say, people just scoop to Exeggutor. I know the feeling. I've played against Exeggutor. It's horrible. And I guess it's a natural response just to say, you know what, I'm not having fun. Let's exit and try and have fun in another game. Anyway, we'll see if SF Monterio is more patient with us. We once again go first, so it looks like we're not going to be hypno-lasered turn 1, which is good. And we start with Genesect and Skrelp. No supporters either, so this is pretty awkward. I'm not actually going to bench the Skrelp just yet. We'll see what our opponent's playing. But we've had a pretty shocking start here. It looks like we're up against Night March. I'm going to go for a laser straight away. And I guess we'll just bench a Skrelp and pass. I don't see any harm in benching Skrelp if he gets a crazy turn 1 Night March on us as well. I don't want to get donked. So we're just going to do poison for 10 on the Pumpkaboo. And we've actually got no real options next turn either. So there's Dimension Valley and a Grass Energy. So he's not actually going to get the Night March this turn, which is good. But we do see a Compressor. A lot of Night Marchers play Grass Energy and Virizion. The similar reason why we do, to protect themselves from lasers and sleep so that they never miss a turn of Night Marching. And that's really going to be annoying for Exeggutor because we'll be stuck at 30 damage each time. And stuff like Pumpkaboo have 60 HP for just one prize. It's pretty awkward. But that's where Genesect comes in. We're going to try and pick off Joltix on the bench and all of those other things that we can grab. We're going to see the Ultra Ball for the Virizion, our opponent noticing lasers straight away. And now we can just go for a Crushing Hammer, and then if we get heads, another laser. Pretty weak start from us. We could attach the active, just in case we draw into supporter, and then we don't have any energy for next turn, but I think if I top deck a supporter of some sort, then I'll do the attachment. So I'm pretty comfortable just passing here. It's not likely our opponent plays any Crushing or Enhanced Hammers or anything like that, but I want to have options just in case he catches Skrelp or some random stuff. So all he can do is bench Pumpkaboo and pass. He's already acting as if he's under supporter lock. I think he's just droughted. All we can do is pass. We top deck into another laser. Pretty bad luck from us. We do, although we only have a few supporters, we do have a lot of outs. VS Seeker would be one of them, but we obviously haven't used one just yet. So We're just going to pass for a knockout here. Pretty odd start to the game, and still no help there from the prizes. Exeggutor getting a taste of his own medicine, not being able to use supporters for a few turns here. We're going to see an Ultra Ball. Likely for Jirachi here. If he plays it. We're just going to see a Gourgeist. Wow, okay. If we can't use lasers, this Gourgeist is going to be impossible to kill. We're going to see a Juniper as well. So, possibly Exeggutor's worst matchup. A gigantic Gourgeist with Virizion EX. We can actually bounce the Dimension Valley and try and start whittling away at this Gourgeist. Now I am going to attach to the Genesect because we've got a second energy in hand. But even so, I mean, this is pretty weak from us. The Gourgeist stays asleep. It's likely our opponent plays Grass though. We've already seen a couple from the Virizion. Or we've already seen him play one anyway, so. We see a Juniper straight away, or a Sycamore. Getting rid of a few good things, so at least it's... Oh, he does play some Joltik, so I guess he gives himself the option... Oh, he's... interesting. He might play Celebi for just Night Marching and then having extra HP. It's probably the way he's gone. We're going to see the Mew actually get the DC attachment. Joltik hits the bench as well. And there's a Battle Compressor just to boot. Probably gonna get rid of a few Lampants here. Actually, he's already got rid of 3 of them. Probably find the 4th if it's in deck. Maybe another Joltik or 2. We're going to see a Joltik, a Pump Kaboot, and a Compressor. Seems pretty standard to me. And the Gourgeist stays asleep. We find ourselves an Execute. Hurrah! We can just... I mean... It's good for us, but all we can do is bench it and pass. And the Gourgeist does wake up. But because he's bounced the stadium back to Dimension Valley, it's only doing 10 this time. We're going to see a VS Seeker here for another Sycamore. Our opponent not struggling with supporters as he should be. Because we've had a slow Exeggutor start here. Another Joltik hits the discard pile. And we're going to see a Comp Search getting rid of a Max Revive and an Ultra Ball. Max Revive, pretty interesting. I guess if you overdo it with your Night Marches, you can just grab one back. So in some ways it makes sense, but you don't see that too often, even in Night March. So we're going to see a switch into the Mew here. And we're going to get smacked for 180. And our opponent's going to take the initiative and the first 2 prizes of the game here. We're going to go into Execute. And we draw another energy. Pretty unlikely stuff. Pretty bad luck so far from us here. We're going to attach, evolve, and laser. Play out the hand as best we can. Hopefully catch this asleep. We do not, but we can just blockade here. I still think it's worth blockading. Because maybe we can slow down our opponent, but he's already pretty much got the setup he needs. So this is probably going to be a grim old day for Exeggutor here. We see a Grass come onto the Mew to cure it of any status, and then another bash of 180 with Night March. Down to Skrelp now, and I'm not holding out much hope here. We actually do top deck a Juniper, so just in time. Probably still too late. We're going to attach the active, try and hammer away some stuff. We can get rid of this DCE. We have the enhanced hammer for this one. We still need to get rid of that Grass energy because of Dimension Valley. And we actually do get heads, so our luck's turned around a little bit. We have a Compressor to help us find more Executes. I keep getting my words tangled up because Exeggutor and Execute are close but different words. We can get rid of the trump card as well. So here we can propagate. for 2 to grab ourselves a Jirachi for next turn. But I still feel like this is going to be a very, very uphill struggle. Because they play Grass and Virizion, our output is going to be shocking. We can bounce with Verbank just for the sake of making it more difficult for him to attack. And propagate 2 back into the hand to play them both down. Hoping that we can get an Exeggutor back online next turn. And we're going to have the Sacrificial Skrelp for now. We do see a Grass. No, he changes it for a DCE, seeing as though the Verbank's now in play. We're going to go into Execute now. We're going to Random Receiver, seeing as though I'd rather not play Jirachi if we can help it, because it's a free 2 prizes. Although I guess Virizion is as well at this point. We can Enhanced Hammer away. We have found the comp search to help us find an Exeggutor. And here he is. We can slap him into the active position and attach to him as well and go for a blockade. It could be a false errand here. If our opponent can't find energy, maybe we've got a chance, but I really doubt it. There's a DCE, going to kill our Exeggutor and pretty much all hopes of the game as well, if I'm honest. We're going to have to get some pretty cheeky head flips on lasers, I feel. We top deck into a VS Seeker. I'm going to compress it to try and give us the best odds. Still pretty slim, but let's actually see what's still in deck. We do have an Exeggutor, which is what we need. We don't have any lasers, so I feel like we need to get into these hammers to have any chance of winning. Let's put the Ultra Ball back because we also need to find Exeggutor. So let's just get rid of 2 random receivers, I think. Did I just get rid of an energy as well? That was kind of silly. Anyway, let's VS Seeker, Juniper. Cross our fingers here. I doubt it's going to make any difference, but we may as well play this out. There is Exeggutor. We have found a single hammer. We're going to have to cross our fingers once again. And we do get ahead, so Exeggutor hanging on in there for now. Poking for another 10 damage. Not going to bench another egg. There's no point. We're going to hope that our opponent can't do anything here. There is a D-Valley. Calling me my deck a coward deck. Night March isn't much better, mate. There we go. We are defeated with Exeggutor, or by a Night March deck with Exeggutor. But there it is. I hope you enjoyed, guys. We did pretty poorly in our last game. Really struggled to find any supporters or any compressors or anything like that to get ourselves going. But the first 2 games demonstrated how the deck can run if we draw decently. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed. And I've been Joe from OmniPoke. See you guys next time. And let me know if this mic is any better or worse or whatever. Fingers crossed it's all better. So see you next time, guys.